Hello everyone, this is Jonathan Little for PokerNews.com, and today we're going to be going over a hand I played in a €2,000 buy-in EPT side event. Blinds are 100, 200 with a 25 ante, as you can see right up here. And a loose aggressive kid raises to 550 from under the gun, and we get pocket kings in second position. Someone recently asked me in the comment section, why do you not show very many hands where you play bad hands? And the answer to that is, I don't play a whole lot of bad hands. You really do not need to play garbage hands, especially from early and middle position. And that's just because you are against everyone else at the table. Whereas if you're, say, on the button and everyone folds to you, you can play some weaker hands because you're only against two players. But like this is a spot where I'm just never playing a hand like Jack 8 suited or Queen 10 offsuit. I'm just folding every single time. Whenever a player raises from under the gun, I typically like to not have a 3-betting range, especially from also early position, because it looks incredibly strong. And you against good loose aggressive players, you really do not want to turn your hand somewhat face up by playing it in an incredibly strong manner. So this is a spot where I really like calling. You could also 3-bet. There's nothing wrong with 3-betting to 1,400 or so, but calling really disguises your range. Some people are afraid to call because they don't want to see a multi-way flop. And that will happen sometimes, but you have to realize that if, say, 3 people see the flop, you're always going to have way more than 33% equity. And if 8 people see the flop, you're always going to have way more than 1/8 of the equity. So all the people who are putting money in the pot are putting money in poorly. You will sometimes have to find folds with an overpair if it goes very multi-way, but as long as you play well after the flop, you should be happy to have people see the flop, especially when you have a very premium pre-flop hand. So big blind also calls a good kid. Flop comes 10-7-2, 2 hearts. We have no hearts. Both players check to me, and this is a spot where I think we just need to go ahead and value bet. We have the best hand almost every time, and we can get called by numerous worse hands. A lot of under pairs will call, a lot of flush draws will call, a lot of straight draws will call. So we bet 1,100 into the roughly 2,000 pot, and both players call. It's kind of interesting when the loose aggressive kid from under the gun calls. I would expect him to fold a lot of the time after checking. When he check calls, what does that even mean? He probably has some hands like pocket queens and jacks, maybe pocket aces, maybe a hand like ace 10, maybe king 10. But it's kind of hard to put him on much of a range because you think you would bet a lot of that stuff. Good kid on the button could have all sorts of hands. Or good kid on the big blind could have all sorts of hands. So turns an ace of spades, that is horrible for me. A lot of the check calling range of these players will be hands like ace of hearts, X of something, like ace jack with the ace of hearts. That's a hand that makes a lot of sense for the lag kid, so not a very good card for me. We're just going to check behind on the turn pretty much every time. There's really no merit in betting. If we bet and get called, we're either against a good draw or behind, and that's certainly not how we want to be investing our money. So the river is the king of spades, and you can't really see it, but the good kid in the big blind bet 2,200, I believe. And he bet 2,200 into the 5,200 pot. So now we have to ask ourselves, is there any merit in raising? Well, what are the odds that our opponent has queen jack for the straight or backdoor spades? Queen jack is pretty unlikely unless it was queen jack of hearts or queen jack of spades. So we're not so concerned with that. That's only 2 combinations of hands, right? Backdoor spades are actually not much of a concern either. The loose aggressive kid under the gun should have way more backdoor spades than the loose aggressive kid in the big blind, because loose aggressive kid in the big blind would probably check raise or just check fold random backdoor spades. Like, I guess you could have something like Jack 9 of spades or Jack 8 of spades or 8-7 of spades, 10-9 of spades. So, maybe that's not a true statement. Loose aggressive kid really should not have very many spades because he raised under the gun. So the best one you can have is queen jack, queen 10, etc. And he's folding all these. So he's folding all these now on the river, so they don't really matter much anyway. But I guess the good kid could have a lot of spades looking at this now. So knowing that, are there any worse hands he can call my raise with than my set if I raise the river? We're obviously not folding. I want to make that clear. We're either calling or we're raising. If we do raise, I think he could call us with 2 pair. So there are a lot of combinations of those hands. And he's obviously going to call us with a set. So I think there probably is a little bit of merit in raising here. If I raise and I get re-raised, I definitely need to fold. So he makes it 2,200. I think we can make it something like 5,800. I think that would be a nice raise size. I go a little bit big, though, 7,100. And I don't think this is a particularly good size because a lot of players in the spot will view my raise as very polarized. And really, am I ever bluffing in the spot too often? I would guess not. Just because it is so easy for the player in the big blind to have backdoor spades that got there. So my raise may be a little bit too thin for this sizing. One other issue is when you make it relatively large is that a lot of players will only call with very good hands, whereas I'm trying to get called here by 2 pair. So if I'm trying to get called by 2 pair, I think I need to make it a little bit smaller to ensure that I do get paid. So yeah, I don't really like my raise size on the river. I would prefer it smaller, but I do think raising has merit in the spot. Raising with the intention of folding if he re-raises me. So he does fold the river. That could be too thin. Let me know what you think in the comments section. I think when he bets 2,200 on the river, we can very confidently raise. If he was to bet something like 4,000 on the river, I would have certainly only called. So always be aware of what your opponent's bet sizing does to his range, because sometimes, well, typically a bigger bet is much more polarized than a smaller bet, meaning that the big bets are either the nuts or nothing, and smaller bets are usually for a little bit more marginal value, like 2 pair in this scenario. So cool spot. Again, let me know what you think about the river. And thank you very much for watching. I appreciate you watching these videos. Also, check out my podcast, Weekly Poker Hand. Those hands are up on YouTube, on my website, jonathanlittlepoker.com, and also on iTunes. So check that out if you like these videos. There's over 100 episodes. So if you like this kind of content, you will like Weekly Poker Hand. Thank you very much for watching, and I will talk to you next time.